Welcome. Flat Earth Debate live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you're currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Chocolate Saint, Eli, 10th Man, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning, good morning.
Hello!
Hello, you enthusiastic lot. Good to have you.
How do you do?
I do very well, Neil. How do you do?
After 5 flights of steps, not well, but I'm good to go.
Well, that's good to know. How are you all in Discord? Enthusiastic, I hope?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, we may begin. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth? It's true, yeah. The horizon's not Earth, Kev. What about any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Hello, guys.
Hey, Owen.
No evidence for that. You're going to need R for that. And if you were going to do it, you need a flat plane to get an angle.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Axis would require a radial value.
That would
Can't get a
violate the
radial value.
celestial sphere model.
Yeah, that would.
Any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle from a curved baseline?
That's also contradictory to the celestial sphere model.
I think they say if it's a slight curve, you can. I think that's what they're saying.
Light curve doesn't give you an angle.
You can't get an angle without straight lines meeting at a vertex. So a curved line meeting at a vertex wouldn't give you an angle.
It all depends if you're going to do the measurement in a model, like orthographic view, or whether you're going to do it in physical reality, you know?
But please describe what an angle is.
Two straight lines meeting at a vertex. Shout out to Godzilla37. It says, ask Virus what doublespeak is, and you'll get two different answers.
Yeah,
Good boy.
I had this whole segment on my show lasting like 20 minutes where he was denying that he's double speaking, and he really, really doubled down on that. Ugh.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
It's a work in progress. They don't know what it is yet, but they're already willing to designate it as scientific, though.
Well, whether it's Newtonian or Einsteinian, it's how you live on the outside of a ball, right? Both of those are trying to describe how that's possible.
So abracadabra would have the same meaning then, since there's no proof for that.
Well, Thinking you live on the outside of a ball is contradictory to the celestial sphere model.
It's also contradictory to everything that you've ever experienced in your life. So there's that.
Everything drops down to the ground, though, doesn't it?
No, gas doesn't go down, go boom boom like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Not yet. I mean, nobody in that field applies the scientific method, so they could still choose to do it.
It's uses the scientific method. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
I think they measured it once, but then they lost the technology and it's too painful to put it back together.
Matt Will East, are you new?
Hi, I've been listening for a good while, Nathan.
Good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Ah, pleasure. Where were we? Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
No, the definition of pressure answers that.
May I
The
speak?
universe is the container.
Yeah, go ahead, Neil.
Well, from what I've been hearing, because there's a gradient, that means there is no container.
What kind of gradient? A gas pressure gradient.
Gas pressure gradient.
All right. Well, to have gas pressure, you need a container. So first gas pressure, then gas pressure gradient.
Just the fact that you have gas pressure gradient means you're not in a vacuum.
Gas pressure gradient's a delta of gas pressure is the point. So in order to have gas pressure, you first need containment. Then you develop gas pressure. Then you develop a gas pressure gradient if you've got a complex dynamic system.
But what about the equalization of the gases?
We live
Because
in a
in a tire,
dynamic system.
oh dear.
If you were in the
Do we have
vacuum,
boundaries? Do we have boundaries to how far we can travel, or can we infinitely travel east, west, north,
Good
and
question.
south?
I don't know. Good question. Anybody else care to answer?
I have no
Well,
idea.
it's kind of a silly question, really, because people have boundaries of travel based on what kind of shoes they wear, or how many granola bars they've stuck in their back pocket. So
I think we know what he means contextually, though.
yeah, but in a way, it's reifying lines on a map, and I think at the level of inquiry we're dealing with here, it's kind of a silly question, isn't it?
No. I think we've been lied to about the land that we stand on. It's not unreasonable to extrapolate that into they've lied about the land we've stood on and there might be more of it.
Right, that's fair enough. But what I'm saying is, for a person to discover what the contours of that land are, would actually require that you stuff your back pockets with granola bars and get some good shoes and start walking. Take with you some measuring instruments such as a compass and a sextant, and figure out where you are based on how far you've moved and what you've observed about the topography, what's going on in the celestial, supposed sphere, and so on and so forth. So when we ask questions about whether we've been lied to about how far we can or can't travel, I mean, my view is that most people in the West today are so cloistered by their digital prisons that they actually have no idea where anything is outside of mere pictorial descriptions.
Right, but when it comes to navigation, that's what we've got. So I can be reasonably assured in terms of them mapping out where the stars are going to be at a given time. So allegedly they've known for thousands of years and can plot them and predict them. Not really a prediction, just watching a clock go round and then saying after minute 1, minute 2 will come next. That's where we're at with the stage that we know the stars like the back of our hand. Hence we have almanacs. And we can say where they're going to be with great accuracy. But that only works within the limitations of the land that they've told us we've got on the maps that we've got that all function the same way, which is flat. So yeah, we can use the angle measurements and the compass and navigation and say it's flat, because it is, that's how it functions. But that only limits us to what they've designated from the kings and queens and rulers of the world down to us, the peasants, by way of their maps. That's all we have to go on. Well, if you go back, and I have, with Martin Liedtke, through the history of mapping, and you can see that there's radical changes that come about in terms of the land, the layout, and various other aspects of it, how it's depicted more than anything else. So therefore, given the vast swathes of different maps and different map layouts, would you not say that that squarely points at there being more deception in that particular area than any other, given just the pure numbers of them?
I'm not gonna try to translate a quantitative number of maps into a qualitative most deceptive area of knowledge or anything, but I will say that what you've just said redounds to my point insofar as if people want to know where they are and what exists, they gotta fucking pardon my French, start trekking. They gotta start going outside and being
Yeah, I agree. If that's your overriding point, then I completely agree. If you want to know what the world is beyond what they've told you, you got to strap on a pair of boots, stick some granola bars in your back pocket, as you put it, and go and have a look. That's what it's down to. If you want to go to the doors of NASA or the doors of your government and hammer them with pitchforks and torches and say, you must tell us what's at the edge, then you're wasting your time. Now, if your aspirations are to come back and change the paradigm that has very much been locked down and shrouded in obfuscation and mystery and occultation, if you want to come back and say, actually, it's like this, there's a good chance that there's going to be people who will want to stop you from doing that. Right? So don't expect a fanfare when you come back. But, if you're intrigued for yourself, go and find out. Just don't expect the world to believe you when you get back here, if you come back at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is perhaps a non sequitur concept or topic, but Antarctica is like a kind of a, how shall we say, a dance floor of eggshells within this community, in the sense that some people want to assert what Antarctica is, some people want to assert what it represents, and as far as I've always understood it, it's a place that's so cold and bereft of food that the mere physical fact of traveling there necessarily precludes the gathering of any intelligible knowledge of location.
Maybe so. It's certainly habitable. I mean, there's certainly people down there now. So, yeah, it's habitable. But useful? I don't know. I don't know enough about it. Even people who've been down there are very vague about it. So when I interviewed Robert Shortman about it, yes, he's running the plumbing and they're doing quote-unquote tests down there and breaking a lot of what would be their claim to be rules about how you should deal with the environment when you're down there. But aside from that, did it glean any unique knowledge beyond the fact that there isn't a 24-hour sun down there, according to his account? Well, no. I mean, that was the primary focus when I interviewed him. Is there a 24-hour sun? Well, with a lot of stuttering and stammering, he described how it came up on the horizon and went back down again and never went round him in a full circle. I know there isn't, according to him. But that's it. I don't have any information. Now, there's also a lot of misinformation about Antarctica, and it's mapped out in a million different ways. Sometimes it's mapped as 2 different places. Sometimes it's mapped as like a wall all the way around the outside edge of a load of land in the middle. Sometimes it's mapped as a single island. It's mapped in all sorts of different ways. Sometimes it's mapped as a long ridge, a long flat ridge. So you can see it in all sorts of different ways. And does that mean we know anything about it? Well, no, we don't. We sincerely do not know very much about Antarctica. But more often than not, when there's a magic trick going on, I trained in magic at college, as sad as that may sound, the whole point is to have one hand getting your attention so that you don't see what the other hand is doing. So when they hold up something like Antarctica for us to discuss, I look at that and go, where's the other hand? What's it doing? As opposed to, yeah, look at his hand with Antarctica in it. Pay close attention to it. Even more closely. Look, he's holding it up. Now he's telling us that we shouldn't be seeing it. He's pretending to put that hand with Antarctica in it behind his back. So watch that hand really closely now. No. Look at the other hand. But nobody does that.
I get what you're asking. And wait, let me just conclude with one more perhaps vague point. Has anyone on the panel here ever heard of the author Kim Stanley Robinson?
No. Anybody else? No, go ahead.
Okay, so there was a time when I was an avowed heliocentrist. And there was a novelist back in the day named Kim Stanley Robinson who wrote a famous science fiction treatise called the Mars Trilogy, wherein he described in excruciating Reddit fantasy detail what it would be like to be on the first exploratory, terraforming ship on Mars. And then once they terraformed it, what society would be like, and then, what the spiritual ramifications would be like. That was the whole purpose of the trilogy. And I found it all very fascinating, not necessarily because I believe that that's how it would play out on Mars per se, but because I thought it was an interesting study in human psychology. But he only wrote 2 other famous books. The first one was called The Years of Rice and Salt, wherein this author, Kim Stanley Robinson, tried to imagine what history would be like if the Black Plague exterminated all Europeans, which we don't want to go into at all on this show. And then the other book that he wrote, I can't remember the name of it, but it pertained to what the grisly details of training for a space mission on Antarctica is like. And so the sense that I got from reading that book when I was young, when I was like 18 or 17 or 18, was that the actual data set that this person came to understand what Mars colonization was like was completely derived from his, sort of gleaning through like journals of people who had worked at Antarctic bases. And I think the whole terraforming project, insofar as it's conveyed to us through the media, is entirely generated like through the tunnels of fiction, if you will, by actual experience, actual, sort of journalism that's done in Antarctica. And so, yes, like we can't make any grandiose claims about what Antarctica is or what it does, but I do think it's really interesting that as far as stand-ins for far off planetary surfaces, like it's always Antarctica. Nobody ever goes to the Arctic, in other words, to simulate space. It's always the Antarctic, and I think that's interesting.
Well,
So
I think
go on, Paul.
Nathan demonstrated.
Oh, John, sorry. Go on.
I was going to say you demonstrated the magic trick pretty well. You said down there 5 times when you were referring to Antarctica.
Right on.
Good point. That's a good point.
So conceptually, you've got a begging the question fallacy of hemisphere when you're talking about Antarctica. But perhaps in
Damn it. They got me again.
Well, it's part of the language, but that's how we're kept in bondage, so to speak, because of our language. You know, atmosphere, people are so used to saying it and are not used to us saying atmo what now, because they're just used to saying it's just the word that means air to them. So when you say, well, no, air isn't sphere-shaped, that word implies that it's wrapped around the edges of a sphere-shaped air in a ball in a vacuum. They haven't contemplated it. It's just part of the language. Now, we're not saying you're guilty of begging the question of a hemisphere and putting Antarctica on the bottom of it, but you are by pure language use. So, hey, Adam. I don't think that's the entirety of the point, though. I was just going to say the left hand showing you one thing and the right hand not doing another could be exactly that. Maybe the Arctic is much more important in terms of what it has to offer and what use it may present and what it might tell us about our world. Therefore, maybe that's where we should be looking. I don't know. I'm not that interested in looking, personally.
It's an interesting...
Can I just offer, like,
just
a
one
very
Whiskey
simpleton...
Shaman. Hold on, just one sec.
Okay, go ahead.
I think someone else wants to respond to you. Was that Adam?
I think it was Adam.
Just in terms of what you're saying, in terms of Arctic and Antarctic, we've no idea Antarctica, what it is, these treaties, there's all these things. But what we do have with the Arctic is history that tells us what we're being told now is a complete and utter opposition to what was claimed there in the past, be that previous maps, people that built the globe, even put land masses up there. And yet nowadays we're told there used to be ice, but global warming there is none. It's just water. Don't look here. Don't look here. So I think with everything in the flat Earth, the reverse is always the truth. They want you to gossip about Antarctica, but the truth, and it's a lot nearer, is in the Arctic. And it's got the contradictions of hundreds of years, missing islands, whole massive continents being there. It's very interesting that history would portray that area like that, and we have that total contradiction now. So either they're completely delusional in the past, or maybe there is something that's worth investigating, but I'm not getting on about it either.
My wife asked me where the North Pole had gone. So we got I'm sure I've mentioned this before, we get a regular subscription to this thing called Banjo Robinson. It comes with a great big map. She was like, where's the area where Santa used to be when we had maps put in front of us as kids? And I was like, yeah. What do you want me to say? It's not there.
No, it's all turned to water. There's nothing there, apparently. Nothing to see here, nothing to see here.
Eventually there won't be any reference to it. It'll just be Antarctica down there. Hey, Brian.
Well, we got to we started talking, we went off on a tangent there, but my question was based off the housekeeping question of gas pressure without a container. That's why I said, can we travel infinitely in all directions?
Gotcha. Well, when you have people try and tie you down to a dome, the then next step will be, well, why haven't you gone to the edges of where you claim it is, which is Antarctica? And that ties nicely into us all being in the same paradigm of, this is the amount of land we've got and we're in a snow globe. Well, I don't know what the container is, or what its parameters are, or how it functions, or what it's made of. I don't know anything about it. I just know the antecedent-consequent relationship that is gas pressure and containment. So while there must be a container of some description, I don't know what it is and I don't know where it is. So it doesn't concern me. You know, when you travel, if you're the guy with the granola bars in your back pocket, as long as you're still breathing, don't worry about it.
I was trying to say something about that earlier before we went off. Can you have a dynamic system that sustains life in the vacuum of space?
No.
Well, only if you have Star Trek theme music behind that.
Space, you say?
What 10th saying is, can you have the heliocentric system? Which is very literally what he just asked about. A dynamic gas pressure system in amidst a vacuum. That's Earth in a vacuum. Look, it's on screen now as a cartoon. There it is. Earth with gas pressure in a vacuum. It's absolutely absurd.
Right, so when they say...
Getting light from another ball of gas in a vacuum.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Just a load of violations of natural law on screen right there.
So when they say gas pressure gradient, which is obviously wouldn't be there without the gas pressure first, it pretty much seals the deal.
That's an
yes, space is fake. Go on.
That's no, the gradient's the okie doke. Because you need the gas pressure first. So why are you talking about gas pressure gradients?
And the natural world and supernatural intersect.
Is there any gas pressure gradient gas fill-up stations on the way to Mars where people can stop by and fill up air?
I mean, there is no travelling to Mars. We've just debunked the area you'd have to travel through to get to that light in the sky. So there is no sky vacuum to travel through to get to Mars or the moon.
I know that. I'm just saying the argument gas pressure gradient is so weak. You wouldn't even have that without a container. That they're trying to make it sound like you have gas pressure gradients in the middle of nowhere, like fill-up stations on the way to travel in this violation called outer space.
Right. Well, they call them stars, don't they? Just random gas pressure in a nice little contained area that's not contained. It's nonsense, but that's what they've got. That's what your stars are. Just little violations of the second law of thermodynamics twinkling away.
Has anyone ever claimed that, or have you ever heard anyone claim that it's held on supernaturally?
What supernaturally?
That like the heliocentric model can exist because we don't have a natural explanation for why the atmosphere is connected or is not going into the vacuum. It's actually supernaturally held.
So going into the assumption that there is still a sky vacuum, but we just don't have an explanation for that, begging the question fallacy that now assumes we've got a sky vacuum. It just doesn't have the capability of violating natural law. Well, then we wouldn't have the natural law anymore. So it's just a way of begging the question when they say, if I appeal to my sky vacuum and say, there is a sky vacuum, I just beg the question of it, but gas isn't going into it, we just need to explain why my assumption of a sky vacuum in its violation of the second law of thermodynamics format isn't violating the second law of thermodynamics. We need to work that out after I assume it's true. No, it's just a begging the question fallacy. So typically when I ask people the question, I'll say...
Can I answer the question?
Well, I'll just give you the question and how I format it before you do, which is to say, without assuming to your fundamentalist religious belief that the sky is a vacuum, how can we have gas pressure without a container? So don't just point at the sky and assume it's a vacuum, in other words. But go ahead.
Yeah, so the supernatural explanation is that the very contours of geometry are such that gas, when normally observed, expands, doesn't expand into space because we can invoke a supernatural entity known as gravity. Now, I describe it as supernatural because if it was a force, it would be natural and it would be manipulable it would be something that we could possibly do science on. Forgive my colloquialism. But because of the way it's currently described, which is to say that gravity can actually affect, for example, the distance between 1.2 and 1.3 meters by expanding the actual space between 1.2 and 1.3 meters, that there is actually a supernatural effect occurring which causes gas to be reflected against its natural inclination to expand into space. And that is a supernatural explanation.
That's not relativity. No,
I mean, this is my interpretation of it, but I would call it supernatural nonetheless.
No, the gas going into outer space or not going into outer space has nothing to do with relativity. Relativity said nothing about that. So if you hear people making up stuff like that, then, or if you make it up, then you're all wrong. You can't be making up. That's not relativity. Relativity says nothing about that.
Yes, that's correct. But you're trying to flog that it's supernatural. What can you define what supernatural means?
Well, supernatural would be that which is super, as in above the natural, which is to say natural objects have certain causal relationships between one another, and these can all be superseded by an unseen, unknowable entity, which we will still assert is true because it's the only possible thing, metaphysically speaking, which can tie all of our observations together.
But the only part of a sky vacuum that falls under that is the assumption of the sky vacuum in the first place, and it's not something you're experiencing.
Well, I know that. I'm just saying that the explanation from the, counter, the controvert, as it were, is that in this one instance, there is literally a magic boundary between the gas that surrounds us and a mathematically conjectured infinite space.
Why would you call an antecedent to gas pressure a magic boundary?
Yeah, there's natural laws that govern these things that would be violated by that. The thing is, they're physically claiming to physically go there and physically land on a physical rock in the sky that they think is physical, called the moon. So while they might want to appeal to the supernatural, they're very literally claiming it's a physical area they physically travel through and is a violation of natural law. It falls under physics.
Yeah, NASA says we're an open... Hang on. NASA says we're an open system, so they can travel to space, because if it's a closed system, you can't get out. Now, we know they don't get out because we have gas pressure.
No, I agree with all you're saying, and I'm not offering my position. I'm trying to contextualize the opponent's position within the framework of natural versus supernatural. And what I'm saying is, as soon as you start to invoke the possibility that geometry itself can mutate in order to explain the confinement of gas on Earth, you're actually appealing to a supernatural source, because geometry itself is not natural per se, or like the contours of space-time is not a natural thing. It's not observed in nature. So when you're talking about gravity...
Hold on. That's the antithesis of supernatural, though. So if you're talking about something that's of or relating to an order of existence beyond the visible, observable universe, that's supernatural. Whereas if you're suddenly tying that into things that are claimed to be physically experienceable by bloody astronauts, that doesn't fall into that category. Didn't I just say this a few minutes ago?
Well, you did, but what I'm saying is that these anti-flat earthers are trying to, do a doublespeak routine wherein they say, gravity is a natural phenomenon. It causes things to happen, but at the same time, the media in which gravity actually exists is a supernatural. Like, are numbers natural or supernatural? I mean,
so
this
it physically
is like
does
basic
something.
QE stuff.
So what? Yeah. So double speak in the respect they're saying it physically does something, but actually exists in the non-physical realm that we don't physically experience. Yeah, that's complete nonsense.
They don't.
That's why I'm saying it's
know.
supernatural.
No, but it isn't. It's just not physical. And when they're talking about it physically doing things and in a non-physical way doing physical things, it's just double speak. Gravity's not a force. It doesn't physically do anything. We don't have any physical experiences of it. So to say that it's supernatural, okay, so exists beyond the physical experience of our world then. Okay, so we don't really need to concern ourselves with it too much when it comes to it doing things then, because it's existing beyond our physical experience if it's supernatural. So, yeah, you can have it. What's that? Gravity supernatural? Yeah, you can have it. No worries. Yeah, gravity exists beyond our physical experience. No problem. I'll let you have it.
Yeah, it's literally just
it's
a competing religious claim. It's a competing religious claim.
I can have it.
But don't bring gravity.
When anti-flat
earthers,
no, it's not. When anti-flat earthers state that gravity causes things, it's because they don't understand general relativity. That states that it doesn't cause things. It's caused by something. And what it, which is being gravity, is described as, is apparent orbits. That's the phenomenon we're told that we will observe. So apparent, not real, not actual. Why does an object fall to the ground appear to fall to the ground in relativity? It doesn't. The ground is coming up at 9.8 M2, supposedly, to meet the object. And it's time dilation. The ground is in the object's future. Now, none of that has anything to do with anything being caused. They don't know what they're talking about. They're equivocating between old and busted gravity as a force and Einstein's relativity. Now, I need to just ask that man who originally, I don't know who it was, originally made the statement that we don't have an explanation. Is he talking about how we can't explain the pressure gradient? Or was I wrong about that?
Do you want to fill him in, or do you want me to summarise?
And I never was, I wasn't trying to influence gravity or even talk about something real. I was trying to say, like, okay, like say we created a vacuum chamber and we released gas into it, and it stayed in a like sphere, right? Then it's violating the laws of nature. It's something supernatural is keeping it there. So can the supernatural world and the natural world intersect where something like that can happen?
Where the not experienceable in physical reality intertwine with the experienceable in physical. That's a contradiction in terms.
So then, then nothing supernatural can happen in our natural world. Like,
really,
God can't come here. No, I'm asking you.
Sorry, hold on. So can you physically show me your thought process that took you to that conclusion? Maybe put it on a scale or something to that effect to show me how physical that thought process was that you just went through. Can you do that for me?
Nope.
So thoughts are experienceable in the physical world, manifest reality, or are they supernatural?
I guess they're supernatural.
Right, so you can certainly have supernatural stuff that you cannot quantify for me, or I can qualify physically in our experience. That would be your thoughts manifest in physical reality. You can't show me that, weigh it, give me a value. You can't do any of that. So it's definitely something I can qualify and describe. I've just done it. But when it comes to those two things intertwining in physical reality, that becomes a contradiction in terms.
Well, maybe, but are you saying that human thought cannot cause physical changes in reality?
I didn't say that.
Well, you said it was precluded.
You're not seeing my thoughts do that. You're seeing me physically do that. As a result, I could say of my thoughts, yes, That's magic. No, it's me picking up and doing something. It's me actually physically manifesting those thoughts that you can't experience into manifest reality. That's different. That's me doing something.
Yeah, Nathan, you could think about doing it and not do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You think about doing it.
Yeah. That's a good one, Brian. I should have thought of that. You're very sharp today.
Your thoughts are supernatural, but they're yours. They're not.
Okay.
They're not extra. Natural. They're like not outside of you.
Actualization of my thoughts, putting them into manifest reality, involves physical work, energy being burned, physical stuff happening. But just having the thoughts doesn't make that occur, does it? So the two aren't intertwined unless I get off my ass and do something. But that's me doing it. That's the physical manifestation. It's not the thoughts being weighed or given a chemical value or saying they have a certain calorie. You know, it doesn't work like that. But this doesn't alter the fact that what's being described by our opponents when it comes to the sky vacuum is an appeal to. It's something that's beyond your physical reaches. It's like, well, what's an astronaut doing then? If that's your claim, that space is beyond our physics. It's the supernatural space that isn't visited by astronauts. You claim it's visited by astronauts. That throws that straight out the window. It just isn't real.
I don't want to ruin your show, Nathan, but
you won't do that.
Wouldn't your current line of reasoning necessarily conclude the fact that convincing people of one position or another was totally pointless?
Sorry,
because
that's so vague. Why would that ruin my show, number one? And number two, why would you be so utterly vague?
I literally wasn't finished, but basically what you're saying, pardon my boorishness or whatever, what you're saying is that the intangible changes that occur in a human being's psyche have no relation to the physical changes in a person's world, such that the only possible expression of a person's spirit is in some kind of action. Is that what you're saying?
Not entirely, but it's reasonable, I suppose. You've got to physically do stuff.
Yeah, the thoughts come first, actions come second, or they don't come second. You can have a different thought.
So what you're saying is the non-physical can affect the physical then?
Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
But it can't be manifest in reality. The non-physical's always going to be the non-physical.
Yeah, supernatural can affect natural if it chooses.
Well then, see, the whole thing with this, we don't have an explanation for gravity is true. Like, we don't have an explanation for a phenomenon that doesn't exist and is inaccurately defined. Like, why are we even arguing against that?
Why would we have an explanation?
Because an anti-flat Earth claim follows, which is, well, it's supernatural. You're not experienceable in reality, but therefore, well, the supernatural can affect. You can see where this is going, surely.
Yeah,
that was the point I was trying to get at, which was that.
We get your point. We get your point. We're discussing it. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Well, yeah, and I'm not trying to step on your toes on this, but the initial point that brought us to here, right, was that we don't have an explanation for gravity. And that's fine. There is no phenomenon.
Who's we?
Well,
that wasn't the initial point. The initial point
for a word.
But that's what I'm saying. Why do we need an explanation for something that's never been observed and is inaccurately described?
It isn't causing anything. It has no effect on anything either. So unlike thoughts, where you can say, well, look at that. You thought about building that wall and then you did it. Yeah, check out the effect those thoughts had on your life. Yeah, now do that with gravity. Now show me it doing something or affecting something or being measurable or it causing something else to happen. It doesn't happen. And when you describe what it's claimed to be causing, I let go of a helium balloon and debunk that Newtonian nonsense in a heartbeat. And then what happens next? We appeal to the ground coming up in pseudo-Ramonian force space-time bending as a result of the uneven distribution of mass. Is that right, Brian? Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. That's not something I observe in my physical reality. What's that you say? It's supernatural for space-time bending as a result of the uneven distribution of mass. Manifest how? We see that because? No, we don't. It's not. It's supernatural. It doesn't affect my reality then. Who cares?
Yeah, to claim something is supernatural, let's say if they're claiming gravity is supernatural, it's basically like the whole tangent plane thing. It's an admission that we won't experience this kind of thing physically. And
Wait, please stop. Don't start to believe that heliocentrists themselves believe that gravity is supernatural. This is merely my description of what it is based on its, sort of ontological contours.
What is?
Because we're talking about
what is?
Gravity.
And what's that?
Yeah, that's the math stuff.
Oh, that's just abstract.
You know what
that's
I'm
just
talking about.
descriptions. That's just abstract.
Well, I know you know that that's what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is you can't use that as a valid argument against heliocentrists because they still believe that the mere mathematical description of a thing is sufficient proof of a thing's existence.
I see. So the mathematical description of the amount of oil burnt by the gas lamp in Narnia is sufficient proof of the gas lamp's existence in Narnia, then?
Exactly.
It's inaccurate. No. Objection.
Like they're a priest.
Objection. It's an inaccurate. Objection. Inaccurate description. That means the description is not mathematical. They're not invoking mathematics. They're invoking a perversion of mathematics. That's not the same thing.
Bugs me out is why did people take up this mission to describe this nonsense that they call gravity when one of the people that are paid to run around as a priest teaching people about this, he can get away with just saying, well, I have no idea what it is. Next question. That's the part that bugs me out. Why is it he can just say, oh, I don't know what it is. We don't know. He can get away with things like that, but then all these other people want to just take up the mantle and start describing and explaining how this thing that Mr. Smoking the Grass Tyson says, oh, we don't know. No idea. Next question. He can't explain it, but the people that listen to him can explain it? Shit's crazy.
But it's like asking a magician to explain how the magic trick works. And the magician's going to go, oh, I don't know how it works. The dove just reappears over there.
Yeah, don't ask about the prestige. We don't know how that worked.
Well, the thing is, I'm going to use phlogiston this time. The people who thought they were measuring the amount of phlogiston within a substance, they never thought about whether phlogiston existed. They didn't know the magic trick. They just knew what they were told about what phlogiston was. So, Neil deGrasse Tyson being honest and saying, no idea, next question, I don't think he actually understands the magic trick either.
Nah, his waistcoat says otherwise. He's a bloody magician if ever I saw one.
Yeah,
well, he certainly has
to make
voice
people
of a
understand
magician.
that he understands it.
Hold on, Chocolate. Go ahead, whoever that was.
He certainly has the voice of a magician. And when he says that the truth is revealed, suddenly it's revealed.
Yeah, he's a magician.
I mean, he blatantly says it though. When talking to that other guy, I don't know his name, Chuck something, and he was talking about, oh, we can send an asteroid on some type of trajectory, and it'll hit an object like the moon perfectly at 90 degrees if we send it at a magic speed. He even uses the word magic himself. Magic speed. I mean, he's showing you the magic trick right there.
Are you there, Adam?
Well, he said 90 degrees.
Hold on 1 second. So, just going to read out one of George Netanyuk's comments. Hey, Nathan, it was brought to my attention that you still do not get Coriolis and are calling for Wolfie to be fired and tagging me in a comment. all of these yours are still our stupid asshole. Wow. Yeah, very incoherent, George. Yeah, no, the guy who collared me for contrasting your contacting of Brian Mullen to have him fired over Coriolis misunderstandings. What I did was use National Geographic's example of how a not actual drift versus the actual trajectory is detailed. Now, I put that on a video specifically calling out Wolfie for putting people's lives at risk. Now, I'm not going to leave this as a joke anymore. It was me pointing out what a bastard George Netanyahu is for going after a man's job because of a mistake made on YouTube. I was paralleling that. Now I've had a little think about it, and 2 or 3 people have pointed this out to me. Wolfie is, in fact, a pilot claiming to account for a drift that doesn't happen. Now, maybe it's purposeful that George Netanyahu, a person who's gone after people's jobs because of Coriolis, now that was an engineer, and apparently you've got to understand Coriolis if you're an engineer. This is a guy who's flying and claiming to correct for something that doesn't happen. That's a fact. Now, I've cited National Geographic with a diagram showing actual trajectory, that's a straight line, versus a trajectory that you see seeming to drift. Now, that seeming drift is what Wolfie literally thinks he's got to correct for. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're correcting for things that don't happen in an aeroplane, that's dangerous. So while it might have started off as a joke, George, I wonder why it is that you, who thinks you know what Coriolis effect is, and if you do, you'll be in absolute alignment with what National Geographic make very clear. There's an actual trajectory that's straight, no accounting for any drift in the straight trajectory the projectile actually takes. And the drift is not actual. That's according to National Geographic. I am factually right. Also factually correct in the statement in error made by Wolfie that he needs to account for that drift. Now, if he's accounting for drift that doesn't happen, he's putting lives at risk. So maybe I should be getting hold of Wolfie's employer and asking him why the hell a pilot is accounting for a drift that does not happen. Now, maybe you should be a bit more concerned about this, George, you senile old bastard. Because if Wolfie is accounting for drift that doesn't happen, he's going to put people's lives at risk. So maybe we should be actually concerned about this, unlike your outrageous claim that bloody engineers who are detailing how planes are taking off and landing need to be concerned with Coriolis. Well, he was detailing how planes take off and land, and Wolfie's actually taking off in them and accounting for drift that doesn't happen. So, George, I expect you to get in touch with him and express your deep concern based on National Geographic's very clear and detailed explanation of an actual path that goes straight versus an apparent seeming to curve path that Wolfie's correcting for. He's going to kill people. And I think we should all be deeply concerned about that fact that Wolfie is correcting for a drift that simply does not happen. It's apparent, not actual drift. Now, if me stressing that on a video means that George, in his misapprehensions that he tried to correct Brian Mullen on, even though he himself doesn't understand drift, but felt it necessary to get in touch with another man's boss over it, well, I think it's equally justified to contact the exact same way Wolfie's employers. He's accounting for drift that doesn't bloody happen. That's outrageous as a pilot. So, Wolfie, riddle me this. Do you get a call from ground control? Ground control to Wolfie Clown Show. There is a man observing you from a non-inertial turning reference frame. Please make micro adjustments immediately. Do you get that call, do you, Wolfie, you stupid buffoon? Look like it's drifting. Yeah, ground control to major idiot. You've got to account for a not actual drift you're not experiencing.
You unlock this door with the key of retardation. Beyond it is another dimension. You're moving into a land of bullshittery. You've just crossed over into the numpty zone.
Wolfie's an idiot.
Dumb. Damn.
Wolfie's a complete clown. Yeah? Now, it may start out as a joke, but George Netanyahu genuinely does contact people's employers based on their lack of understanding of Coriolis. And Wolfie is in direct violation of the description of Coriolis that is a not actual deflection that you will not be accounting for. He seems to think he's correcting for it in aeroplanes. That concerns me deeply, given that people's lives depend on him understanding how a plane works. And if there's no actual drift to account for, there isn't, that's Coriolis, what he thinks he's got to account for, then something needs to be done about him. Because he's going to kill people. And I'm being dead serious. Thank you for bringing it up, by the way, George. I really appreciate you bringing that up. It's nice that I can bring up the total lack of understanding of Coriolis drift. That's a not actual deflection experience from a rotating platform of a projectile moving through an inertial reference frame that isn't actually drifting, that's moving in a straight line. Wolfie thinks he needs to account for men watching him from roundabouts. That's deeply concerning. I think we all agree.
Well, I would have to say that I know for definite because I debated against George on the topic of Coriolis effect on Ranties a couple of years ago. And I know for a fact that George Netanyahu doesn't understand the Coriolis effect. I know for a fact that what he claims to be Coriolis is only what we call globulus. So technically, George Netanyahu, if it could be shown that he did contact or was involved in the contacting of Brian Mullen's employer to cause Brian Mullen, let's just say, career issues, then he should, like, I mean, I don't see why he shouldn't end up in court. If I gladly would do it, would demonstrate in court that he can't demonstrate what he claims Coriolis effect is, yet I could give a physical demonstration of it in a courtroom. That he has no business contacting someone's employer or being involved in the contact of someone's employer to claim that they don't know what Coriolis effect is when he obviously doesn't. So court is where George Netanyahu needs to go for causing someone career problems based on something that he doesn't understand. That's what needs to happen. And I would gladly get involved.
My bad. Just queuing something up.
No worries. I finished.
Well, I'm going to show you my demonstration, my National Geographic video that shows precisely what I'm talking about, because it's a fairly concise and easy demonstration to follow. It's got a roundabout with a ball being tossed across the top of it. And it shows how... Let's just click on pause and bring this across for the audience rather than me actually talking about it with the art not on screen. Here we go. This is the actual path or the trajectory of the projectile described in Coriolis effect. It has a straight path. Here is the observed path as you rotate on a platform. This is what it looks like. This is what it actually does. So it actually moves straight and merely looks like it curves. Now, the simple fact is, Wolfie has made it very clear in comments to Sleeping Warrior that he believes he has to account and correct for Coriolis drift. Now, that is a total misapprehension of the effect being described and detailed and shown on screen. This effect, there's Wolfie's comments talking about him correcting in an aeroplane for drift. Here is the National Geographic example. There are two trajectories. This one, labelled real trajectory, is a straight path. There is absolutely no way on God's green earth that there is any necessary adjustment required for a path that is straight, because it is not drifting. The real trajectory is straight. Now, here's the apparent trajectory. It is appearing to have a curved path. That would be drift. Now, Wolfie said he corrects for that. Apparent trajectory? You're telling me he's making corrections for something that's not actually happening? He needs to lose his job. Because the real trajectory is straight. So if he's making corrections for this curved path, he's going to kill someone. That's a fact. So, Wolfie, Why are you flying a plane and making corrections for an apparent trajectory? You need to concern yourself with the real trajectory, Wolfie, as made clear here in this National Geographic video detailing Coriolis, something which you absolutely do not understand, Wolfie, and that concerns me greatly. It concerns me for the lives of your passengers, because if you're correcting for this apparent trajectory, it means you're correcting for something that someone's looking at from the ground on a rotating platform. So as I said in that little snippet from the last time I brought this up, ground control to Major Wolfie. You need to correct for the not actual trajectory you're not experiencing because someone's watching you seem to drift. You're going to correct for that because that's what you seem to say you're doing, Wolfie. In fact, it is what you say you're doing. Well, that's deeply concerning for the lives of your passengers. Someone needs to do something about this. Here's National Geographic to make absolutely clear that I'm not overly dramatising this point brought up by George Netanyahu. I'll thank him again for highlighting it. Thank you so much for highlighting the very concerning fact that Wolfie is literally telling people that he corrects his plane for something that doesn't happen. That would be an apparent trajectory. A drift that doesn't happen because the real trajectory is straight. So why is Wolfie correcting his plane for something that doesn't happen? Like I say, this concerns me greatly. Employers should be contacted, shouldn't they, George? Thank you for reminding me.
As a matter of public safety, I would like to know the airline he flies for so I can avoid that one at all costs.
Absolutely. I don't want to contact his employer.
Serious.
I'm not like George, a complete scumbag wanting to ruin his career. But like John says, in reality, I would also like to know what airline Wolfie works for so I can avoid that airline like the plague. And definitely not got on a plane with Wolfie at the helm because he might kill me when he corrects for something that isn't happening. I want to know which airline it is. Do all their pilots correct for apparent things that aren't real? I mean, real trajectories, straight lines, they don't need any correction made. But their pilots are telling members of the general public that they make corrections for apparent trajectories observed from non-inertial turning reference frames. That's concerning, right? We should all know which pilot and which airline this is occurring on, because I don't want to get on a plane from that airline. If all their pilots do this, do all Wolfie's co-pilots account for apparent trajectories that aren't actually happening, rather than concerning themselves with the real trajectory that moves in a straight line? What's going on? Which airline is this? I definitely don't want to fly with that airline.
Yeah, I think it might
You would think it would be pretty simple to make the claim that you're correcting for what you would actually have to be correcting for, which would be the rotating Earth underneath you, as opposed to claiming that you're correcting for an observation made from the Earth while you're in a plane. Like, how long do they think this trick is going to work on people? I don't get it. This is ridiculous. In 2022, this is what we're doing?
I don't know, but I'd hope a pilot understood the difference, wouldn't you? If my pilot tells me that he's going to correct for Coriolis drift, as Wolfie has definitely done, I would start sweating. I'd think, my God, doesn't this guy know the difference between non-inertial and inertial reference frames and observations from a non-inertial turning reference frame of a not actual deflection his plane isn't going to be doing? I mean, why is he telling me that he corrects for this? That's worrying.
And in the meantime, not paying attention to that runway that's moving, that's supposedly? I don't want to get in this plane either. These people are crackheads, man.
You could also stretch this, Nathan, to the young pilots or young future pilots that watch him and the confusion that it may cause them when they do end up going to pilot training and find out that they don't actually have to correct for it because of this misinformation that he's passing along.
Just another okie doke, man. Every trick they got, it's called an okie doke, as far as I'm concerned. Because instead of telling you what they should be correcting for, which is a rotating Earth underneath them, they're going to tell you all about an observation made from the ground. They think people are too stupid to understand that, then y'all need to wake up. It's not 2015 anymore with this Coriolis crap.
And indeed, that's true. But it does give me an opportunity to be a little bit over dramatic about Wolfie 6020. So with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. But unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!